If you're a B2B leader trying to turn scattered marketing and sales efforts into a predictable revenue engine, this episode's for you. The Demand Generation Map. What it is, why it matters, and how to build one. Welcome to Driving Growth, the go-to-market podcast for traditional B2B businesses that are looking to build systems to create predictable revenue growth. In short, turning their company into a revenue factory. I'm your host, Steve Whittington, president of Roadmap, and a believer in one simple truth. Sustainable growth is not an accident. It's engineered. And my company, Roadmap, is a builder of go-to-market systems. Okay, well, let's start with what is a demand generation map. Most companies confuse marketing tactics with a demand generation strategy. A demand generation map is not just a list of the campaigns, it's actually a framework that guides how you create, capture, and nurture demand all across the entire customer and buyer's journey. So it takes the motions that you have determined with your mathematical modeling to be effective and efficient and ties them together. Here's the difference. Marketing in general is just a series of the motions, activities that drive the motions. That's marketing. Demand generation map, that is architecture that pulls all these different motions together into one entire system. So when you do this demand generation map, it's going to answer 5 kind of core questions for you. It's like, where do we need to generate demand and where does it exist? What are the gaps in how we're generating demand versus what we want? What are the levers that we need to do to create new interest? And how are we going to capture that demand efficiently? And last is, how then do you nurture those that are not ready to buy? And you have this all mapped out in your demand generation map. So why do you need a demand generation map? Well, to be honest, most companies haven't taken the time to map out all the different things that they're doing to build awareness, to capture it, and then to nurture. And the fact of the matter is that they really maybe don't have a demand problem. They might have a leak problem. So they're generating awareness and they're not converting it, going to trade shows and not capturing it, or putting out ads and not properly funneling them into an ongoing nurturing system. They're chasing cold leads with expensive outbound instead of warming them up prior and over time. So they haven't mapped out the customer journey as to what would be the most efficient way to actually generate demand. So without this is typically what we see. Without a demand generation map, you're struggling with misaligned marketing and sales motions. So you're doing a marketing motion that isn't tied to supporting a sales motion. They should just be one motion, but often, they're completely independent. So then you're getting poor return on ad spend and poor overall return on investment from your campaigns. You have an unpredictable pipeline, meaning like stuff comes in flurries and batches. It's not consistent. You can't predict what you're going to get. How many leads are you going to get per month? How many discovery meetings, for instance, you're going to get, or quotes that you're going to send, whatever the critical metric might be that you need. And there's just wasted effort on low intent prospects or low intent opportunities. And it's just overall very inefficient. So that's why you need one. You need to map it all out so you can figure out where your customer journey is going and how you need to add force and motions to the various different aspects of that customer journey. So with it all mapped out, you're going to be able to drive consistent inbound. You're going to be able to reduce your customer acquisition cost. You're going to be able to shorten the time to acquisition. So your deal velocity will increase, will get faster, and you're aligning your teams across the full funnel that is occurring. And in short, you're going to start to turn your go-to-market into a revenue factory, not just a hope and pray engine that it is perhaps today. Hey, you're listening to the show because you want to figure out how to grow. The first ratio, the first thing that I do with CEOs is I determine what the true cost of growth is. That becomes the baseline from which you make all your decisions from. That is part of the mathematical model. That is part of our toolkit. But today, you can go to weareroadmap.com and book me, and in 30 minutes, we can give you a really good understanding of what your cost of growth is. Now, let's get back to the show. Okay, now the real hard stuff. How do you actually build a demand generation map? Now, you can't see it, but I've got all my notes spread out here. There's a lot to go through here. So the first thing is you have to have deep customer understanding. So that you'll have to have done some research on your customers, and you need to be able to break down across the customer journey how you're going to create demand, capture demand, and then nurture those ongoing prospects and opportunities. Okay, so first thing, deep customer understanding, fish where the fishes are. You need to know where to create that demand. So what channels do they hang out with? Are they on certain types of social, industry events, associations, publications? So where are they so that you then know where you can create demand? Now, you also need to know what is going to create demand for them. So, what are the triggers? What are the pain points? What is the information that they're looking for? So fish where the fishes are and have the bait that they're going to bite. So find out where to create it and what is going to catch their attention. Okay, so now you know where you need to be creating demand and what you're going to use to create demand, and you can't harvest what you haven't planted. So you need to generate awareness and educate your market on the problems they might not even know that they have. So if you're a traditional B2B organization, manufacturer of something or an engineering service firm, stuff like that, there's some typical types of tactics that you can use to create awareness and create demand. So educational white papers informing people about different problems that they have and challenges that you overcome, and showing how you overcome that. So similar stuff in their space. You can do stuff that have plant tours showing your capabilities. Webinars are always a good way of not only generating awareness, but actually capturing demand as well. You can have a series of downloads, which you can promote on social, but again, that's a demand capture tactic doubly. Listing off your certifications that you have sort of lets people aware that if they're looking for a supplier that has this type of certification, that gets listed for SEO, that they can be found that way. You can have, Q&As that people can read through and search on that answer questions. Obviously, if you want to be able to reach your audience, and it might be at industry associations, you get on a speaking panel. So you're an expert speaker talking on different subjects, and this come into networking, local business networking groups, thought leadership content, such as a podcast like this, press releases about your awards, industry awards, product showcases, and making sure that you have your point of view gets across in various different channels where your folks are, so they understand what it is, the solution that you're providing. Okay, and then just overall defining category creation messaging. So for us at Roadmap, we are really adamant on customer understanding to be a fundamental piece of your go-to-market, so you can build that, your customer understanding, right into your go-to-market system. That's our point of view. That's part of our category messaging. Okay, so when you look at all that kind of stuff and you're building all this awareness and doing all these tactics, you want to track stuff, right? What gets measured gets managed. So you need to see what kind of engagement, so you can understand what's working, right? If people are actually watching your videos, video completions, downloads that you get on your different white papers and stuff like that. If social is a play, then you want to see how your follower growth goes up, all that sort of stuff, and impressions. That stuff is the upfront leading indicators that you're going to see if that your content is generating awareness and reaching the audience that you want it to reach. It's top of funnel activity. And remember though, if you don't track it, you can't manage it. And so you can do all these different motions that you believe from customer understanding are going to build awareness, but you want to see if it's getting traction. And of course, that leads to the next step. After you create demand, how do you capture demand? Okay, you've done all this work to build awareness, your audience, your future customers, your total addressable market, they know you, but awareness doesn't pay the bills. you need to convert this interest that you're spending a lot of time and effort, time and treasure on, into pipeline. So what are some of the tactics for traditional B2B companies? Well, I already mentioned that, a webinar, not only does it build awareness, it is also a way to capture demand. White papers are a form of lead magnets that, when people download and show interest, now you've got a lead magnet, you've captured demand. You can have calculators on your website, for instance, that people get a lot of value out of. That can be for life cycle costs. It can be for different types of uses of your product, which they can get savings from, that sort of thing. Something of value to your end customer that then you'll be able to capture that demand from, right? And, paid search intent-based pay-per-click is one of the baseline things that you want to do is you want to capture that intent in the market. And of course, that will tell you how your landing page actually resonates so that's another way of capturing demand by having call to actions embedded throughout your content on your landing pages, that sort of stuff. And then all the basics, request a quote, book a consult, making sure when you're on a trade show, you're scanning all the leads that are coming in and you've got a follow-up sequence for those, case studies that are showing your work so that people understand what it is. And then of course you have those outcomes on your case studies so that similar clients can see what it is, the results that you drive. So all that's ways and tactics that you do to capture demand. So you want to measure certain things, right? You just want to measure, what your form fill rate is and, consultation bookings and, page time and bounce rate, if the stuff that's happening that way. And then, looking at the sources to opportunities, what actually piece of awareness or different types of demand capture tactics you're doing is creating an opportunity, right? And then of course the downloads or usage of your tools, all those kind of things matter so that you can again add force to the actual tactic that is driving results, which then is tied back to the motion that's building awareness that's then being captured that's driving results. So a lot of manufacturer or industrial websites they're almost set up to be like a brochure. They're not something that is an engine for capturing demand. Your capture tactics that you're doing, they need to be frictionless, and they need to provide value so that people want to engage with you. So when you're starting to design all this kind of stuff, you need to think about it in the mind of the customer of they will give you the information because there's real value there for them, right? And there's low barrier and low risk for them to do this kind of stuff. They're going to get real good value out of you for capturing that demand. I've been setting this up where you might be thinking that this is very linear, but we all know that that's not the case. So you can be doing awareness, you can capture it, they can go back into awareness. It's really, really messy, and the customer journey can be a circle often for a long, long time, sometimes, months, even years. And so, most of these leads that you're capturing or the awareness that you're building, they're not ready to buy yet. They're still learning, they're investigating. Your job is to build trust, to be relevant, and to be in their memory so that when they are ready to buy, they think of you. So you need to be building tactics so that you stay top of mind and you continue to nurture the demand that you've created and the demand that you've captured. So some easy to deploy tactics that you can do as a traditional B2B company is having a monthly insights email that could be about regulations in your industry or different types of tech that's coming out, or even some of the different types of funding that you're seeing that's occurring, right? You could have a request for proposal nurturing sequences to procurement teams that is helping them build their procurement documents. So you're top of mind and they build their RFP with you in mind. Obviously social content on LinkedIn is a good one for business. Obviously B2Bs featuring client successes, operational wins, that sort of stuff keeps you top of mind. Having client stories that they share, again, keeps you top of mind and allows your clients to amplify awareness about you. And various different drip sequences can be engineered to continue to keep people in the sequence, in conversations, right? And just, continually reaching out and having like account management on these various different individuals so that you keep it personalized. You keep it human. Bring them in for a site visit or like once a year, that sort of thing. There's lots of things that you can do to keep that steady drip, that steady awareness, and that top of mind for this, this demand that you've created, the demand that you've captured, and now you got to nurture it on an ongoing basis. And that's where a lot of folks fall off, is they spend a lot of time, creating demand, capturing demand, and they spend very little effort on nurturing the demand that they've already bought and paid for, that they need to continue to keep the kettle on the stove, keep it simmering. So metrics to track would be, re-engagement rate, email click-throughs, if you've got lead score and you see if that's progressing, if it's falling off, if it's staying steady, see how long it takes for somebody to be nurtured, to be booked, that kind of life cycle. Sort of look at those kind of things to see how long you need to be, how many touches it takes before they become an opportunity. I know for one of my companies that it's at least 12 touches before a lead will become an opportunity. I have that number in place, and so the revenue team knows how many times they need to continue to have contact with that lead, that marketing qualified lead, to move them into a sales qualified lead to be an opportunity. Well, this leads into the fact that you've got to know your numbers. If you're going to build this map, if you're going to build a demand generation map, that's going to start with how you build awareness, and then how you capture demand, and then how you create demand, how you capture demand, and then how you nurture demand. You've got to know some basic number to start. What is your total addressable market? What is the number of marketing qualified leads that you need? What is the traffic that you need to actually get those MQLs? What is your win rate? You have to have the mathematical model in place to build this, to figure out the various different motions, to see how much each motion is going to generate, so it all flows into an overall system. So you know what your cost of lead is versus your customer acquisition or your customer lifetime value. You've got all that kind of stuff. All this ultimately leads into developing your go-to-market efficiency ratio, knowing what your true cost of growth is. And you have to map it all out and figure out the mathematical model, apply those motions, put it all together, and then you can see which motions are the most efficient, which ones are inefficient, and what your total cost of growth is. There are long buying cycles for most B2B organizations. And if you aren't tracking pipeline velocity, if you aren't tracking your customer acquisition costs, if you aren't segmenting, if you aren't nurturing, if you aren't doing this work, you're always going to feel like you're behind and you won't know what you need to do next. It's going to feel like you're constantly struggling, you're constantly treading water, you're constantly trying to throw stuff against the wall to see what sticks. Map out your customer journey, apply motions to it, apply the mathematical model, and then you will have certainty as to what works, what doesn't work, and how you drive your growth. So in closing, a demand generation map, figuring this all out, it's not optional if you want to scale. It is kind of the GPS of your revenue engine. You need to build it around what you got to do to create, capture, and nurture. You need to map out your customer journey and map out the motions in that journey that are going to give you the different types of inputs and outputs that you need. And you need to understand your actual buyer behavior to do this well. You need to know your numbers so you can optimize instead of guess. You have to make this measurable, repeatable, and your entire team has to own it and work together on it. That's it for today's episode of Driving Growth. If you found this useful, share it with your team. Better yet, grab a whiteboard and start mapping out your customer journey so you can then map it to the motions that create your demand generation map. As well, go to weareroadmap.com/podcast to download the Revenue Factory Toolkit, in which you'll receive mathematical models and a framework for building your go-to-market system. Also, subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts, with new episodes dropping the first and third Wednesday of every month. I'm Steve Whittington. Thanks for listening. Keep building your revenue factory one brick at a time.